the Baen Free Radio Hour.
Hello and welcome to the Baen Free Radio Hour. This week, Sean Hazlett begins part one of his interview with John Ringo and Lydia Sherrer for Beyond the Rift. And we continue with One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name, part 47.
Are we recording? We are recording. Because black holes actually fall into the whole Beyond the Rift thing, is why I was saying that we should probably at some point talk about black holes. That's true. Sorry. Sorry. Wait, I guess we're starting now. Go ahead.
Yes, just after we talk about black holes, of course. But I wanted to welcome everyone to the Baen Free Radio Podcast Hour. Or Hour Podcast, whichever you prefer. I'm here with John Ringo and Lydia Sherrer, and we are, at least notionally, going to be talking about Beyond the Rift. Mm-hmm. So where are we in this series? Like, where do we leave off? Like, when somebody picks up the book, has never read anything before.
So they shouldn't be touching this book if they haven't read the rest of the series.
Yes, they should.
Go back and say, no, they shouldn't.
They should pick this book up and read it simply because it is a book and we want to sell it, Lydia.
You know what?
And if they pick this one up and they like it, they'll go all the way back and start from the beginning.
If you pick it up and you realize that it's a sequel, go ahead and buy the other three, preferably in hardcover.
Okay, yes, buy this book.
On Amazon or wherever else books are sold.
Yes, buy this book. And then realize it's the fourth and last of the series and go back and get the other three and start at book one into the real. I will fight you on this, John.
It is the fourth of the series. We will mention that, okay? But you absolutely should buy this book. Buy this book.
Yes, you should buy it.
But this is the fourth book in the trilogy. Per normal. And
per Baen trilogy, it's the normal.
For those who
it's actually a very light Baen trilogy. It doesn't have 5 books.
Yeah,
I mean it's a light Baen trilogy.
For those who are completely unfamiliar, it is a near future environment here on Earth where a girl who is really seriously into VR type gaming online using their systems is lured into doing a Pokemon style AR outdoor game. And in the first book just has to get used to being out of doors.
People, sunshine, mosquitoes, and actually dealing directly with her teammates. And so as the game progresses, one of the things about the game is that it is based on a secret invasion by transdimensional creatures of the that are invading the Earth. And so throughout several of the books, you're unsure if this is a real thing, as to whether it's just a game or if it's a real invasion. Yeah, the reader's clued in, but the characters don't know what's going on.
Yeah, and so it's not much of a spoiler alert that it's a real invasion. And so this is the climactic fourth book in which they confront the aliens who are invading from some unknown universe, planet, whatever, coming through a rift. But it is mostly about trying to find where the invasion is coming from and then localizing that and seeing if they can stop it. Because the problem is that this invasion is seriously messing with electronic systems and is slowly shutting down the world's grid, and that will cause the death of billions of people if it happens. So in this book, you really start to get the urgency of this and how, if it doesn't happen, if they're unable to close the portal, that pretty much that's it. Chuck it all in.
Chain reaction, modern day apocalypse.
It's back to the Neolithic. Okay, so that being said, Lydia, you talk about the book itself.
Yeah, so in TD Hunter 4, this is Beyond the Rift, I had a lot of fun wrapping up all the plot lines. I'm all about wrapping up plot lines, very much about sticking that landing. And so we had a lot of fun wrapping up the kind of Steve, Matilda, Lynn development, how that's going, really solidifying and
kind of cementing the team dynamic. Lynn comes into her own. There's the whole Larry Coughlin reveal. All the things that people who've read the first 3 books, have been like hoping for and like leaning for, like, all right, I can't wait. Like, here we go. You've got it all. You've got it all. So the first bit is Lynn and all the people who in the last book, spoilers are okay, right? People expect spoilers.
No, don't give away the entire book.
Well, no, not the entire this book, but like what happened in the end of the last book.
Oh, yeah.
So in the end of the last book, Behind the Veil, the characters themselves finally are told what's going on. And so they are given the delightful choice between volunteering to fight in the transdimensional counterforce or going on vacation to some unknown isle, completely blacked out for the next 6 months, and then the world might or might not still be around after 6 months. So Lynn and her team and most of the TD Hunter strike teams do volunteer. And so the first part of the book is they go to some intensive training to help them formalize as a unit and integrate into the actual military personnel that are part of the transdimensional counterforce who have known this was an invasion all along. And then they embark on a battle tour, which is the PSYOP, the biggest undercover operation of all undercover operations in the history of the world, where basically dozens and dozens of TD hunters are fighting these gigantic nodalities, these gigantic like bosses in the middle of cities, fighting them live.
These fake monsters
that
aren't actually there.
It's being televised. They are literally undertaking black ops on television, pretending it's a game while it's actually being real. So it's really funny. I enjoyed writing a couple scenes where, Lynn and her buddies are like, how do we keep this secret? And their superiors are like, you don't. Just pretend exactly.
Extremely public.
Exactly. Pretend
in
it's
fact,
exactly what it is.
You even encourage the conspiracy theorists who say that this is a real thing. Yes, go ahead and boost those people, because then everyone will be like, it's not really a real thing because all these conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, so that was a lot of fun. So they go on the battle tour. They're fighting these nodalities. They're trying to destroy them fast enough to save infrastructure. It's not working. They have to find the source somehow, some way. And through a series of Lynn's expertise in gaming and the help of the AI, the game system AI named Hugo, and a couple other factors, they have, I don't want to spoil stuff, but they have clues. They go fight stuff. Boom, bang, bada bim.
The sort of the thematic of this whole thing is that it is a Bildungsroman. It is a coming of age story. And so the characters had to go through growth throughout these 4 books. And each of the characters had to, in their own way, come into their own in their own way. And Lydia handled that really well in the last book, sort of wrapping all of that up together. And one of the problems is in books in which there are secrets that you are keeping from where secrets are being kept is the reveal and when to do the reveal, and under what circumstances to do the reveal. That was something that, for those who've read the Black Tide universe, that's something I struggled with Nightwalker, was when would Walker reveal who he actually was. And I actually wrote the reveal multiple times earlier. And, it's how many little crumbs to throw in so that it's not a complete and utter surprise for the readers. And, that that this is something that is going to happen. And then how to time it. So it's the best possible time for the reveal is one of those, when you're dealing with something like this. But all the way back at the beginning, when Lydia and I first talked about it, we talked about when the Larry Coughlin reveal would happen. And that I think was handled very, very well, because that's the big reveal. The fact that this is, you pretty much, if you're a reader, you pretty much figured out from the beginning. First of all, kind of telegraphing, it's a John Ringo book. Okay, it is not just about invisible. It's not just about gaming here. Okay, it's a John Ringo book.
On it, John. It's got your name on it. It's got your name on it, John.
It's got my name on it. It either does or potentially does involve the extermination of the human race. Okay, could go either way. I have exterminated the human race. I haven't exterminated the human race. Could go either way. And honestly, I was kind of very much towards the end of this. When you brought up certain things, I was like, well, maybe they lose. Yeah.
Like John, I'm a little bit more of a people pleaser in terms of my readers. And John, we left the ending open to further adventures. So there could be.
Well, not only is the ending open to further adventures, the ending is still open to them losing.
Yeah, that's true. Depending on what happens, because there's other factors than just the TV monsters.
Because I haven't wiped out the human race lately.
Yeah,
and I'm starting to get that Jones.
I know. What about your superhero? Your whitey superhero one?
I was going to wipe out the human race, but I decided that I liked his life too much, and he liked his life too much, so I decided to go easy on him.
Okay.
And I haven't. I finally figured out. Like, the problem is I don't have enough scenes unless I wipe out the human race, because I originally planned to wipe them out. Because they deserve it. And most of humanity, have you taken a look at the world? Most of humanity deserves to be wiped out.
No, all humanity deserves to be wiped out, John. The fact that any of us exist is grace.
So I've been, anyway, that's a completely different universe, which admittedly is a Bane universe. But those books are still being worked on with Casey, and another one's coming out. Sometime. We did a little too much skipping, in my opinion, but we're going to go back and fill in a whole bunch of stuff, because it will be it is kind of, hang on a second, and jump from here to there. But that'll be okay.
I'm sure your readers will rejoice.
Yes. So the entirety of the human race is not wiped out. New York City is wiped out. It is so thoroughly gone.
Probably for the better, maybe.
But anyway, and Beyond the Rift, we wrap up a lot of the stuff, and it's a good book. It was a very easy read for me to read through when I was doing my editing pass. So it's it's a good read. It's fun, and so there is some discussion about continuing with an anthology that goes into what happens afterwards and other things that are happening simultaneously. But by the book. Okay, so in 13 minutes, we've pretty much covered it. It's time to talk about black holes.
Sean, did you have some questions for us?
Sean, do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, I had a few. In terms of the transdimensional entities, there's some discussion as to what their composition is, and there's a lot of quantum mechanics involved. How did you think about creating these entities, and what are they?
It's a horrible, horrible question. It's all William, Sean. I'm kidding.
I've got it. First
Sean,
of all,
Sean can answer.
I'm one of the people who passionately disbelieves in dark matter and dark energy. Okay, I passionately disbelieve in the entire basis of dark matter and dark energy. Can I do the math? No. But I have seen too many times in the history of science where people have come up with hand-wavium for something that turns out to be something completely different. So I really don't think much of the whole dark matter thing.
Well, that's just the stuff they can't measure. They have no idea what it is, right?
That being said, they're made out of dark matter.
I hate it. I don't believe it. But they're made out of dark matter.
They're made out of dark matter.
So Sean, I did, for the last book specifically, because one thing I wanted to make sure that was in the last book, because Lynn and, people volunteering to risk their life to die for their country need some sort of explanation. Now, obviously, if they were troops they wouldn't need it. But they're not troops. They're volunteer. They're civilians that are basically subcontracting with the government as
So are
gamers.
troops.
Yeah.
So they're just not contracting.
Troops
They're
are
contracting.
volunteers. Let's be very clear.
Anyway, they needed some sort of something to be believable, and it really wasn't for Lynn, really. It was for the reader to have some sort of explanation, because a lot of the 3 books was building up of the reader being, and me hearing from readers, hearing from people reading reviews and stuff, where people are asking, I wonder how the game really works. Like, how does the back end work? Like, because David and I are avid gamers, and we know the mechanics of how the game works. You should see David. David gets into spreadsheets and math. And so David has entire spreadsheets of like the health leveling and like exact numbers for how things would work. And we went over and talked about, and when I was writing the first book, we talked about the mechanics of the whole thing and how like the actual destroying alien technology in the background is interfacing with the game interface and what the player is actually doing. And so some of it is just for show. Some of what the player sees in the game is literally just for show to make the game enjoyable for the player. Because if it's not enjoyable, players aren't going to play it. They're not going to kill TDM, which stands for transdimensional monsters, by the way, for anyone who hasn't read the book yet. So they can't kill TDMs if it's not a fun game. But then the other half of the stuff is actually connected to the advanced technology of the batons and everything else that they're using that destroys the entities. The hand-wavium explanation that I put in book 4 leaned more toward quantum mechanics and entanglement theory rather than toward like the dark matter type stuff, because John doesn't believe in it. But just in terms of particles, we're all about the particles here. These are transdimensional entities made out of exotic particles, because that's everything that's being discovered now, right? All these new particles that we're now discovering and using to explain how things are happening.
I believe you call them exotic particles.
Yes, exotic particles. So these entities are clouds of exotic particles that are in some way, we would say hive mind, but it's not so much hive mind as quantum entanglement. And also another thing that I found really interesting in my research when I was coming up with explanations for how the reader to explain what was going on is stuff like slime mold, which slime mold is actually a different category of creature than everything else in the animal and plant kingdom. They're not fungi, they're not animals, they're not plants. They're like a fourth thing. They're like half fungi, half, and
they're Cthulhu.
Freaky. Yeah, they're freaky, amazing stuff. But anyway,
slime molds are really, really bizarre.
Yes. So I did some research into slime molds and just had so much fun researching these and like watching videos of slime molds grow. But it's just a very interesting and very relatable explanation of how an entity could not be thinking, not intelligent, but not a plant, but not a fungi, and yet have these like reactions and these built-in like stimuli response things that these TDM, the overface of the game, which obviously all the graphic overlays are all just made up, all the monster images and everything, they're just made up in the game to make it enjoyable for the player. But they are superimposed on these portions of this larger entity, which is controlled, and kind of like the nerve stimulus center is these nodalities, the big bosses. So when you destroy the bosses, you basically clear out an area. Whereas if you just destroy all the little ones, like leading up to the boss, they're just going to regenerate and spread again. So anyway, all that to say, particles, quantum entanglement, slime mold, dark matter.
They are quantum entangled slime molds.
Yes, there we go. Quantum entangled slime made out of dark matter. Don't leave that.
Made out of exotic particles. Okay. Exotic particles being defined as particles that we have not yet fit into the standard model.
Yep.
Okay.
There you go.
They probably do fit somewhere. We just haven't figured out where.
Now, this is a rabbit hole question.
That was literally something that we should have put in there, was like just that sentence. They're exotic particles that we have not fitted into the standard model. They probably do fit in somewhere, but we just haven't figured out where. There.
Exactly. Anyway, this is a rabbit hole question. What exactly are slime molds, and why are they different? I need to know now, because I am not a slime mold expert.
Okay, what exactly are slime molds? Slime molds are slime molds. Now that sounds like a really weird answer, okay? Except what are plants? Plants are plants. What are animals? Animals are animals. What are fungi? Fungi are fungi. What are slime molds? Slime molds, slime molds. They're none of the above. They have no specific evolutionary line that scientists have been able to find. And they react in ways they grow in ways which are plant-like, and they react in ways which are animal-like. And so they do not have a neural system per se, but they do have a pain response and will react to it. They also have a searching capability that's
really fascinating.
That's much more animalistic than it is plant-like. Like, one of the things they found about roots is that roots will sometimes diverge in such a way as to find better nutrients. But slime molds are very, very active about that, to the point of sending out like tendrils to try to find stuff. And then when they don't find stuff, they send it out in different directions. And then having found something, they then build the best roots to move the nutrients around.
They've actually been studied. The slime molds have been used to create computer algorithms to plan the best street systems for cities. Because
the one that I love,
they're so efficient at figuring out how to get stuff from A to B that they've like mapped out the algorithms of how the slime molds make these decisions. It's fascinating stuff.
Oh, you did all this research into slime molds and you didn't find out the most fascinating use of slime molds ever?
Go for it, John. I'll let you do this one.
It's how they designed the Tokyo subway system.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean that was part of street subway system.
No, that's literally the way that they designed the Tokyo subway system was that they put varying amounts of nutrients in different spots, which represented where they wanted the subway stations to be. And then they released slime molds, and slime molds found the best path between them. And that's how they designed the Tokyo subway system.
Yep.
Right.
That explains the quantum. That explains the quantum stuff.
Yeah.
Because you've heard of the traveling salesman problem?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's basically, it could be solved with a quantum computer like that.
Yeah.
Even though it's like, And anyway, keep going.
Yeah. And that was one of the algorithms that they used slime molds to develop, was specifically to solve the traveling salesperson problem. They've also used it to use algorithms derived from slime molds to design better school bus routes. It's a lot of stuff along those lines. So yeah, they are really fascinating organisms. But the problem is that, like, they're the only, slime molds are completely unique. They can't even figure out what the evolutionary path was to develop them. They can find an evolutionary path for plants. They can find an evolutionary path for fungi. They can find an evolutionary path for animals. They can find an evolutionary path for slime molds. It just doesn't seem to exist. So
maybe slime molds are still in the same form and state that they were when other things were in a different form and state. Maybe they are already in their perfect form, so they haven't evolved. They're perfect.
I'm kind of a panspermian, in that I really don't think that the way, when you look at everything having to do with the evolution of life on Earth, there's these jumps that occur, especially very early. Okay, very
punctuated
early.
equilibria, right?
Punctuated equilibria. But some of the jumps that occurred very, very early don't appear to have a good evolutionary pathway. And this is not something that's like, creationism or something like that. It's something that a lot of biologists put out. Like, where did bacteria come from? Because there's not a good evolutionary pathway from archaeobacteria to bacteria. Where did eukaryotic cells come from? Because there's not a good evolutionary pathway from bacteria to eukaryotic cells. Now, there are portions of eukaryotic cells that appear to be bacterial in nature, but it looks more like there was a eukaryotic cell that was eating bacteria, and one of the bacteria figured out how to survive and become symbiotic, which is where we got, for example, mitochondria. right? So mitochondria appear to be a bacterial cell that got incorporated into eukaryotic cells. But you look at the structure of eukaryotic cells, and it just doesn't there's not a good evolutionary path for it. But eukaryotic cells are what plants, fungi, everything, not slime molds. Right? So we got something completely different. So that's why I call them the Cthulhu organism. I think that they're actually star spawn, and they've
imagine slime molds the size of the state of Kentucky or whatever.
Yes, they've been planted here on Earth to like do we all know Warhammer 40K?
Yeah.
Okay, they're gene stealers is what they are. Okay, they're the first part of the invasion of the Earth, which occurred about say 1 billion years ago. But they're just staging for the final invasion. They have been for the last 1 billion years. So that's kind of my take on slime molds. I don't trust the little bastards.
How big do they get? Are they individual cells? Sorry, I told you it was a rabbit hole.
Most of them are, well, how big do they get? They can get upwards of like 100 yards.
Yeah, they can get really big.
But really thin.
Yeah, so it's not like 100 yards by 100 yards. They stretch out long, going after nutrients.
Right.
And it also depends on the environment. Like obviously, if they had an ideal environment, they're kind of like a lizard. Reptiles will grow to fit their environment. They'll keep growing until their environment won't hold their, sustain with food and everything.
Is it the slime molds that survive in nuclear reactors? I can't remember if that was a slime mold.
Hang on a second.
I am going to go to that thing called the internet.
Yeah, I think there's some bacteria, and I think there's some like fungi that do. And there's some that even thrive.
Bacteria. Okay, so they're bacteria, not slime molds. Yeah, so there are bacteria that survive in
and like eat radioactive material, that basically clean it up.
Yeah. And they have been looked at as a way to process some nuclear waves. But I was thinking it was slime mold because Mike, friend of mine, Mike Gantz, he used to work in he still works in the nuclear power industry. He works over in Sequoia nuclear plant. But he was talking about the slime that would build up inside. I wasn't sure if it was a slime mold or if it was a bacteria, but apparently it's a bacteria. But yeah, you get slimy biological stuff inside of the reactors. And they didn't used to have, like, this stuff has evolved recently. Now you can imagine that evolution is pretty fast inside of a nuclear reactor because you got to evolve fast or you're going to survive. But yeah, there's a lot of weird biology. To the extent that, we're getting completely off the book, but one of the things that
we'll get back to it. I just, it's important to understand slime molds to understand.
It is important. Yeah.
Well, a friend of mine who worked in microbiology, they were working on this big project at University of Georgia, and they were working with yeast, which is something very commonly you insert genes into. But there is a predatory microorganism on yeast, and do not ask me to tell you what it is called. This was back in the 1990s when I had a conversation. But they had this predatory organism that got in, and so they had to clean everything out. Everything was destroyed. But they cultured it, and they weren't able to specifically identify it because she's like, there are millions of these things, and most of them haven't been categorized. But this particular one released a substance that it was a liquid that when you put it under pressure, when it didn't have pressure, it was red. When we put it under pressure, it turned green. the material that it released. And that just kind of got me kind of thinking that there's so many of these things, and probably this kind of stuff happens all the time, that a venture capitalist with a lot of money, somebody, not even Elon Musk level, like Larry Ellison, could probably make some serious breakthroughs just by sending out stuff to everybody that does biology stuff and saying, do you have any odd microbiology that you run across? And just seeing if you can figure out something to market from it. Right. And your department, if it's university, your department will get, part of the patents if you patent something, because there is so much microbiology in there. And it was something that I was, besides the slime mold thing, it was something that I was trying to figure out how to put into this book, but because we were dealing more with quantum mechanics, we were dealing with energy beings.
As opposed to cells and biological creatures. Yep.
Yeah. So like recently I've been trying to figure out how do vampires actually work. But that's beside so another question, Sean. Tell me you've got something.
I was going to
otherwise it's black holes and frame dragging, man.
I don't know. I was talking about sexy vampires. We can go vampires.
Oh, you'd rather do vampires than black holes. Okay.
That's how vampires work. They're sexy.
We have time to do both. So
no, Sean, go ahead. Ask another question, Sean. Go.
All right. Well, so TDMs were modeled off of slime molds.
Among other things.
Okay. Well, let's go with the among other things. What were the other things?
When I wrote the original, because I wrote sort of a rough outline, and I wrote
back in 2014, 2016. When did Pokemon Go come out?
Oh no, it was way further back than that.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't it? Yeah, it was more like 2012 was when this stuff was written.
Well, you said you started it when Pokemon Go came out. That was 2016. Pokemon Go came out in summer of 2016.
Okay.
So you told me that was kind of what started the genesis.
What triggered it?
Yeah.
But that threw me completely off. Oh, so what I did was I wrote sort of a rough outline, and like the first, I don't know, 4 or 5 chapters.
It was about 35,000 words. So yeah, like 4 or 5 chapters.
That'd be more like 20, but okay.
It depends on how long your chapters are, John. My chapters are like 8,000 words. So
my chapters are 7 pages approximately.
I know.
So that was when I did it. It was just, well, this is a vague idea, and this is kind of what's happening. I really did not want to get into what they are or how it actually works.
The reader
or how it actually works.
The reader wants to know, John.
You have to. You do mostly urban fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What precisely is the energy particle in your magic?
It is a alternative, not really parallel to the electromagnetic spectrum, but it kind of is. But whereas the electromagnetic spectrum is the source of, or not necessarily the source is the sun, but I mean it's the sun plus fields and other stuff. The source, which it is actually called the source. The source of magic is the source of creative energy of the entire universe, which has some spiritual angles and spiritual aspects, because there are fae and angels and demons and all that stuff. So magic in my urban fantasy is just science the mundanes haven't figured out how to explain yet. So there are hand-wavy scientific explanations for how it works, that some of which I reveal because the reader's interested in that sort of stuff. But John, one thing to better understand the TD Hunter series from the reader's side is it is a combination of a John Ringo story and a John Ringo fan who has been reading John Ringo since I was 14 years old, who really likes John Ringo stories, but also I wanted to know more. And since I was a co-author, I could make there be more. So it's like, John, it's like your stories plus all the stuff that a lot of readers have always wanted to hear in addition to your stories. So that's why I explain things, because as a reader, I would want to know. And because I had a lot of readers ask me, like people are asking in like the forums and on the Bane Bar and stuff. So.
And what I always say is, I don't know. Do I look like a quantum physicist to you? Well, actually, with the beard and okay. But no, one of the things that I have always worked very, very hard on is to give just enough hand wavium that it sounds like it works without explaining so much that people can poke holes in.
Yep.
And so I try not to explain too much. Here's something that will shatter everyone's just consciousness. Okay, it's going to ruin people's lives. Are you ready?
Here we go. Classic John
ready?
Ringo moment in an interview. Here we go.
Because of the different frequencies of light that are contained in the sun, if you actually tried to do SAPL, the beam dispersion would be too high to actually do it. You cannot maintain a beam of sunlight over, fractions of a light second, much less multiple light seconds, because the different frequencies interact with each other and the photons actually bump into each other too much and spread the beam. That's what beam spread comes from. Okay. You have to have polarized monochromatic light for long distance light travel. Therefore, staple doesn't work at all. You can't actually do it. Sorry to bust your bubble, but there you go. Staple doesn't actually work. So the whole basis of the entire freaking Troy universe work.
That's okay. We don't care. It's fun. Nobody cares, John.
So much fun. Planet-destroying beam of sunlight is so much freaking fun. I love it. So it's going to remain, even though the physics doesn't work, because it's a different universe and the physics are different there. There we go.
Yep. There you go.
So that is my hand wavium on anything. Anybody says, most the old science fiction authors, if they got something wrong, they'd be like, do I look like a physicist? Or I'm sorry, the physics has changed, or the science has advanced. Mine is, it's a different universe and it works that way there. Okay. If I've got Wolf 359 wrong because, I said that there was a planet like 2 AU from the sun, and it turns out there's not a planet 2 AU from the sun. In that universe, there's a planet 2 AU from the sun. Okay, get over it. I don't care about your freaking telescopes that tell me where planets are. I don't care. In my
or
universe,
John, you could just say
there's not a planet 2 AU from the sun yet.
Yeah.
I'm saying no, I'm going with it's a different universe. It's different there.
I just tell people that's what fiction is for. Get over it. You don't like it. I mean, suspend your disbelief, then you'll like it. There you go.
When I read the classic stuff, the stuff that I always loved was when they went to planets. Space is cool and all, but it's just empty, right?
Well, you had a ball with Marduk.
Yes, because it was a planet.
Mm-hmm.
Planets are fun. Planets with life and alien species and stuff like that, those are fun. Space, qua space, actually is kind of boring. It just goes on and on and on, and there's stars and there's dead planets. There's not much character there. And unfortunately, a lot of what we're looking at these days with finding other planets and looking at how Goldilocks Earth is it's very, very likely that the reason for the Fermi paradox is there's nobody else out there, not in this galaxy.
Yeah.
And the likelihood that there will be a planet out there, like in Star Trek, where you beam down to the planet and you're in shirt sleeves and you're throwing your phaser around and you're breathing the atmosphere. Probably the greatest scene in any Star Trek movie is when the shuttle in Galaxy Quest lands and they open up the door and he goes, "What are you doing? Do you even know if there's air out there?" Well, the answer is probably there is, air out there, and it's very, very toxic, and you're going to die, or it doesn't have any oxygen. Okay, one of those two things. You are probably going to die if you breathe that air. Lydia, you turned off your mute. Go ahead.
Well, I was curious, John. I'm totally unrelated to TD Hunter, but again, I am a John Ringo fan long before I was a John Ringo co-writer. What percentage of like the whole details of Marduk with the society and the plant life and the biology and everything, how much of that was you versus David? I know he gave you quite an outline, but was he getting into the specifics of the world building on Marduk, or did you do most of that?
No, he said David gave me a tech Bible, which was enormous. But it was shortly after he had discovered Dragon Naturally Speaking. And if you ever heard David talk, it was basically David talking for a very, 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 very,
okay, John.
Long time. Okay. And embedded somewhere in there was like, okay, I finally figured out that the aliens they're covered in slime and they have 6 limbs. I had them as centaurs.
Oh, like man.
Detroit, okay?
Okay.
And David came back and said, if you had read the tech Bible, I did, okay? But it was 35,000 words of string of fucking consciousness, and somewhere around 19,586 words was like this many that was the description of them, and then it just continued. But because I was a David Weber fan, I read the whole thing and went, Jesus Christ, his editors must really have a job. And then Axis of Victory came out, and I went, oh, it's because he's got Dragon Naturally Speaking now.
Yeah.
And then I met him. I did not meet David until after I had written 3 of the books.
Wow, very interesting. Well, anyway, Sean.
Anyway, no, he said it was Jungle World, and that it had these kind of creatures. You know, that the Mardukans, okay, that they were covered in, I can't remember if he said a polysaccharide or not, or if that was mine. But they were, and I had them as bipedal. But then when I realized he was going for sarks, I think he actually said that in the email back to me that he was going for sarks. I was like, oh, okay, now I've got it. Except they're derived from frogs rather than lizards.
Yeah.
So they're amphibian derivatives. Other than that, no, it was all mine.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a lot of fun. Lots and lots of fun.
Like the Aquadrax and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff came from a D&D module that I did when I was in the Army called The Jungle, which I wrote after going to Panama and doing JOTC and discovering that I hate jungle. But
at least
I think everybody does. I think that's
at least you weren't getting hunted by 6-legged predators.
I had all these characters who were like 25th level paladins that were playing in, I was the DM, and I had all these characters that were essentially unkillable. And so I created a module to kill them. And I told them, this is a module specifically designed for all of your highest level characters that you have played for years, and they do not officially actually die. Okay. This is just a module to challenge you. And after playing the jungle a few times, they went, fuck this, I'm going home. Because they rarely made it. I think they made it like 400 yards in one time. And the people who were employed in like keeping the jungle back were all of the people who had not had enough money to pay their way out. Right? So you had to pay to get in, and you also had to pay to leave. And if you didn't pay to leave, you were employed keeping the jungle from overrunning the citadel that was there until you paid off enough that you could leave. But it was a Monty Hall, because like you got 30 yards in and you came across the scattered remains of an adventurer party that had, like, the what was the scepter of Orcus. I mean, it was a total Monty Hall, but you didn't survive, right? It was fight your way, just like fireball everything in front of you, smash everything, run in, take a look around, grab something, and before you can make it out of the hole that you just made in the jungle, you die.
Yep. All right, Sean, ask another question before we just wander even further.
All right. Well, here this will take us on another rabbit hole, but it's relevant to the book. Greenbrier. Greenbrier.
Oh,
why
man.
is why that choice?
Well, John suggested it. John, have you been there before?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, did you go to like tour the bunker, or were you staying there at the hotel as a guest?
No, I visited the hotel.
Yeah. So John suggested the Greenbrier, and why did you suggest it? It just randomly came to mind, or was there something specific?
It was. I think that the history of the Greenbrier is cool.
Oh yeah,
I also use the Greenbrier. I also use the Greenbrier in We Few. We Few, the bunker under the Greenbrier is actually where all of the shuttles are stored, or the fighters that use in the attack on the palace. Yeah. That's the actual bunker.
Yeah.
But I just think that the whole thing about that there are bunkers on the Greenbrier, because in the event of a nuclear war, they would evacuate the Congress to the Greenbrier, and those were really just designed for them to ride out the radiation.
Yeah.
And so, it was, well, we'll send Congress to the Greenbrier. We will send the president to Mount Weather. And the Supreme Court had this, like, utterly crappy little, it was like a dude ranch kind of set up.
Well, so John, for book 4, John and I had mostly done phone calls for our collaborating, like brainstorming and stuff for the past books. But for book 4, I really wanted to sit down with John in person, just because I like face-to-face better, and I think it would just make for better conversation and better brainstorming. So for book 4, I drove down to Chattanooga, and we met in, what's that billiards club called?
Chattanooga Billiards Club.
Yeah, the Chattanooga Billiards Club.
BBC. Yeah.
So we met in the Chattanooga Billiards Club, and I think we were there for like 6-7 hours, something like that. Yeah, because I had originally intended that I could spend the night and then we could meet again the next day if we didn't cover everything we needed to cover, and we just kind of powered through. And John was like, we're already here, let's just finish it. I have a weird sleep schedule anyway, so we just went ahead and did it all in one session. But I had a whole list of.
There was beer, food, and I could smoke.
Yep, there we go.
We could have stayed there. Mike Masson and I usually go there and brainstorm when we get together. The first the Black Tide books that we did together were all brainstormed at Rembrandt's or Chattanooga, generally CBC, because it's got plugins for your laptops. It's got food that you can order. I can smoke, and there's beer.
Yep, and good fries, good beer cheese. So I had a whole list of things I wanted to go over with him, just in terms of details of, hey, how do you want to handle this in the 4th book? How do you want to handle this part? And we also kind of hashed out. I am very much a planner and an organizer in terms of plot lines, and so I very much wanted to make sure that we were writing it in such a way that not only could it be open for more series in the future, but it could be open for more like parallel things, not necessarily the series continuing, but parallel things that follow other characters that are side characters in this book, or other situations that are mentioned as to happening, but you don't get any details about it. I actually have a couple more short stories in mind that I don't know, Tony might have me write for the website, that are like backstory things that some of the characters do. But all of that we wanted to make sure that we built out the world in enough of a sandbox that people could take it and run with it if they wanted to, kind of in a Black Tide Rising sort of way. Just in the sense that we do hope that there will be writers in the future who enjoy the series to the point that they're passionate about like a certain character or a certain situation or a certain like what if in the universe, and might want to come to Tony and be like, hey, I'd love to write this in the Hunter universe, maybe collab with me or, however we do it, anthology. And so I wanted to make sure we had all of those strings tied up and that we were on the same page. And so that was a lot of what we talked about when we sat down. And so when we were talking, John said, hey, they're training, good training. For anyone not familiar with the term, good training is basically the suckiest of all, sucky sucks. And in the end of the third book, it's like, all right, guys, we're going to go enjoy some good training now. And so John recommended the Greenbrier to be where they go do good training because these aren't boot camp recruits, right? These are elite gamers who have been making quite a bit of money doing this. And they're used to being on the streams all the time. They're used to doing sponsorships and everything. And they're not there to get washed out. They're not there to get hazed. They're not there to get, they've already made the cut. They're just there to help improve unit cohesion and getting used to the actual technical details of how the equipment works. And they're getting some new equipment that's like not stuff they would give to the gamers who don't know what's going on. Still kind of looks the same, but it's bigger, better, more boom. And so they have to have some time.
This stuff affects people. The stuff that they throw at the TDs, just as the TDs can affect people, the stuff that they throw at the TDs can affect people. So one of the reasons the two reasons they do not have heavier weapons in the TD universe is one, it is a brand new science. It's not even brand new technology. It's a science that they're just beginning to grasp. And going from just beginning to grasp a science to heavy weapons, you don't do it overnight, even with modern technology. A theoretical physicist 5 years ago figured some of this stuff out. Then the applied physicists have got to explain it for the engineers who then got to engineer it. And the theoretical physicists are still figuring it out. And There's not that many of them that are even read in on it. So It's not like the entire field of theoretical physics is working on this. So getting really heavy weaponry is difficult. Second, once they started to get really heavy weaponry, they realized that if you shot people with it, it could do damage. So you have to be careful of friendly fire. Whereas with the lighter weaponry, you can take care of all of the small stuff that is doing a lot of harm, but you're not going to hurt anybody else.
Yeah. So with the suggestion that this happened at Greenbrier, it was a very good location because it combined luxury with secrecy. So that was kind of the fun thing that we got to lean into. The new recruits to the TD Counterforce, these elite gamers, they got to go to a really nice hotel, have really great food catered for them.
It's also close to Washington. So
I mean, they didn't have to clean. They didn't have to clean their rooms. They didn't, they could focus on the training, and that is something that they were
all officers.
Yeah, they had all the infrastructure at the Greenbrier for all that to happen. Plus, they had the bunker there, and so they did a lot of the briefings, the top secret briefings, and a lot of the training. Not all the training, but a lot of the training in the underground bunker, because they were also training to possibly be hunting TDs in different environments than just out in an open field. And so training down in the bunker with columns and walls and all sorts of stuff that helped prepare Lynn and her teammates and everyone else to eventually what they did at the end of the book, which was fighting underground, basically. And it was just, John made the suggestion. I looked it up and I'm like, this is perfect. It's got all the elements that we need. It's a known location. And then what I did was I took a day. I left early in the morning. I drove 5 hours to Greenbrier. I did the tour, spent a couple hours walking around the hotel. I mapped out a blueprint. I took lots of pictures. I asked specific questions that I needed to know for my notes. And then I drove 5 hours back in one day. So I basically took a day-long field trip to the Greenbrier, because for me, I need to walk there because I'm smelling the air to see what the air smells like so I can describe it. I'm like feeling the texture of the curtains and looking at the angles of the sunlight so that I can include those just little bits of description that really embodies the location, and details like the stories that like the tour guide told about the blast doors and them being hidden for so long, and people thinking that this outer chamber of the underground bunker was actually an expo center and used for expo stuff for years, and nobody knew it was part of a secret underground bunker. And the big blast door that led to it was closed behind a secret wall panel for decades before it was discovered. And so all just a little detail that you can get some of that online for sure, but you know, it's a paid tour, a paid historical tour. So of course they don't want all that info. I couldn't take my phone for part of the tour. We had to put all our phones in a locker, and that wasn't just because they wanted to keep the tour exclusive to you coming, but also part of the bunker is now being rented out as a data center for sensitive data, and so they have to make sure that there's no like cell phones in certain parts of the bunker. So anyway, I actually took a notebook. In fact, I could probably pull it out of a drawer, and I asked him if this is okay. He said, yeah. I took a notebook, and I actually, because I couldn't take pictures, I drew a rough blueprint of our progress through the bunker and like all the places we were going, and kind of so that I had like a blueprint in my head of where the layout was and where the different rooms were and stuff like that. So I had that with me, and I was sketching and drawing and writing down notes and stuff while I was doing the tour. And so like that's the kind of stuff I like to do, is to go on location and do the research. I wish I could have gone out to the Safehold facility out. That would have been a lot. That would have been amazing.
Yeah, that
it was
thing,
too far for me to drive though. I couldn't drive.
That thing is bizarre.
I'd love to go out there one day. Yeah.
Gust Front. So Gust Front, a buddy of mine was going to school at Fort Belvoir in Washington. So my buddy Doug Miller. So I drove up to Fort Belvoir because I can't remember why I wanted something south of Washington because I wanted the attack to go towards Washington in Gust Front. And so I just looked on a map, and I went, oh, Fredericksburg, right? And so I drove up to visit Doug, and like the first day he's in class. So I went out and I walked around the Washington Mall, and this was back way prior 9/11. So I'm like figuring out side angles and where you would put snipers and all this stuff on the Washington Mall. And so,
yeah, you do that nowadays, somebody will arrest you for sure.
Yeah,
I'm just writing a book, officer. I'm not. I promise I'm not
just writing a book, officer.
Yeah.
I told that to Bill Forstchen one time, and he said he did the same thing with Oak Ridge in 1945. That he was walking around and he was like, yeah, so if the Germans attacked Oak Ridge in 1945, and he was like, oh, well, in that case, this, and everybody was helping him with how you destroy Oak Ridge. But
yeah, we did the same thing with Scout Platoon Leaders course in Kentucky. We used to go out on the economy, and you would have to disarm explosives and things like that they would just put out in the not real explosives, but that they would just put out there. And I did it before 9/11. After 9/11, apparently, like they I guess when they tried to do it, people would report these things. Yeah, like people would freak out.
So anyway, we went like the next day. We went to Fredericksburg and just walked around Fredericksburg, and then went to Richmond, and like there were scenes that were in the book that were basically Doug and I doing stuff, like straight up, like the guy that's like, well, why don't you use my my water pump or my pump house? That's an actual scene, and the character is described exactly as he is. And I said, I would love to use you as a character. And he gave me a quote from like, he talked about Look Homeward, Angel. And how the second book was You Can't Go Home Again. And I said, no, I mean, it'll be a very gentle description. He said,
just get my clothes right, something like that. And like Wendy, who later became a recurring character, if you will, in the books, was based on the girl at the apothecary shop who was this cute little blonde in a traditional, 1700s dress. It was like, and everywhere you went, it was welcome to historic Fredericksburg, welcome to historic Fredericksburg, welcome to historic Fredericksburg, which is why it had to be repeated over and over in the book. But when Doug and I, it's like, this is the town that is going to be at the center of the attack, and then it'll spread out. And when we were driving in, I don't even know if it's still there, but there was a reserve engineer company. And Doug and I just looked at each other and went, oh, that's so perfect. And that was where all the engineer stuff came from. So I get the whole thing about going someplace and really feeling it, and smelling it, and getting to know it. I'm old and I'm tired.
It happens.
I don't travel anymore.
Yep, it happens.
So it's just...
Which is why co-authors are great,
Yep. Like one of the reasons that I put part of Chad's story in Seattle was because I'd been there. Mm-hmm. And I had a feel for Seattle. I even, there was this one encounter that I had in Seattle that I sort of wrote into one of the books as a side encounter. So yeah, I used to love to travel. As a matter of fact, if I traveled more, I would probably be writing more. That's being honest. But it's just not in the cards for a variety of reasons.
Yep.
So anyway.
Sean, hit us with your next one.
No, Sean.
All right. Yeah, one thing.
Sean and John, if I'm not, sorry, it is a little bit similar.
Yeah, so one thing, especially during training, you caught the 15 minutes of eating, but I guess you deliberately wrote it so they weren't being harassed. But when you were talking about that, all I could remember is eat it now, taste it later, right?
So I went through Marine Corps officer training corps, Naval Officer Training Corps in college, and I went through Quantico Officer Candidate School. And the thing I hated the most, more than the sleep deprivation, more than the PT, more than the harassing, more than any of that, was force feeding myself. Because if you think about it, sitting down to eat a meal is an incredibly psychologically important part of bonding and relationship building, and it's supposed to be a time of rest, and not necessarily that it has to take an hour, but I mean,
which is why they were trying to break you out of it.
Yes, exactly. Well, 30 minutes versus 15. I sitting down at a meal with people, because I'm an extrovert, very much a people person. It's a very precious time to me, and being rushed through it under threat while eating so fast that you feel sick later. But if you don't eat that much, then you'll faint at your 12-mile march with your 70-pound pack. That was something that I kind of wanted to allude to, because it is a very real part of military training. But also, Lynn and her comrades, this is not boot camp. They're not trying to rush them to the point of discomfort. They want them well fed. They want them focused. All that stuff. Again, this is they've already proven themselves. This is just, let's get all the equipment, all the unit cohesion put together. And John and I kind of talked about that, how much to lean into if there's military discipline or any of the hazing or any of that. And we decided, no, that wouldn't add to the story. And Lynn and her companions, it wouldn't actually add to their growth. It would just be adding unnecessary friction. So we went more of the contractors, kind of route. But yeah, they didn't have a ton of time to eat because there's a lot to do in 4 weeks. So you got to get in there, eat your food, get going.
I have always been a big eater, and I've always been a fast eater. And when I was in high school, I was in the first high school I was in, it was a Catholic school in Atlanta. It had 800 students. The second high school I was in, my last 2 years, the graduating class was 823. It had 4,000 students. And my I think it was my second semester of senior year, my last semester, but it was my senior year. I had a class that was all the way across campus, and there were 2 lunch periods. 4,000 students, you can't feed them all at once, but it was 2,000 students going through. Okay, and I was all the way across campus. So by the time I got there, I was all the way at the back of the line, and I always ate the exact same meal every single day: 5 hamburgers, 3 orders of fries, 2 milks, lots of ketchup. I ate enough ketchup that it did in fact count as a vegetable, right? So my friends during that semester, I would get there, and by the time I sat down, I had 10 minutes to eat. 5 hamburgers, 3 orders of fries, 2 milks. And I would always do it in 5 minutes.
John, you make me scared of when my 4 boys are teenagers. I'm like, guys, how am I going to feed you? Like, I don't even know how.
No, teenagers, you just shovel food on the table and run. Okay, teenage males, especially if they're athletic. I was not on any of the sports teams, but I would go up to the springs every single day and free dive. So I was using 12,000 calories a day easily.
Yeah.
Between the cold of the water and as much free diving as I was doing.
Yeah.
So I would. So in basic training, it was, eat it all, get out. You can taste it later. And I'd go in for breakfast, and it's like I would get everything because I've always had very, very high metabolic rate. Okay. And I do not retain fats very well. So when I was young. Okay. At one point when I was in the Army, I actually got put on the weight control program because I had too little body fat. Okay. And I'm like, Doc, ask anybody. I eat everything that's there. I eat more. After I have gone to the chow hall for dinner and eaten, I go out and I get fast food. What do you mean? I've got to gain weight. Okay. I was 6% body fat. 6%, okay, which 7% is the minimum for males, right? So he's like, well, you got to gain weight. I can't gain weight unless I don't PT, okay? If I don't PT, maybe I can gain weight. So he actually put me on a 2-week no PT profile that I was just supposed to eat as much as possible. And I came back and I was at 7% body fat. He says, okay, now you're off of it. Yay! And I never had that problem again because he was like, I'm not going to put you back on the fat boy program when you're like this, okay? But when I was in basic, I would go in for breakfast. That first day at basic, it's like everybody's, right? You got to be done by the time your platoon leader is done, right? And I sit down and I go through and I'm like, bacon, eggs, hash browns, sausage, biscuits with gravy, all this, I'm taking absolutely everything they have. And I set it down. People are like, man, you're never going to be able, we got to eat fast. You're never going to be able to finish that. I'm like, watch and learn.
Did you ever do any professional eating contests?
Huh?
Did you ever do any professional eating contests?
No, I never did. I should have.
You should have, for sure.
Yeah, especially with a timed eating contest. So this one time, I had this platoon leader who was a weight nut, was a fitness nut, and he would have like an apple for breakfast. I swear to God. And for reasons, I got stuck in the middle of the platoon that came in behind mine. I had to go run a detail. Got there. It was like I was halfway through the second platoon. I got in. He's already down there. He's like, he would eat his apple very slowly, right? So the guys would have some time to eat. But yeah, it was like, and I got everything, and they're like, you're going to have to throw it all away. I'm like, watch and learn.
That was not me. Obviously, I would eat as much as I needed to, but it's just unpleasant. I'm very glad, John, that was not a point of friction for you.
It was absolutely not a point of friction for me. No.
Yeah, it was not. I like to take my time at meals. I like to spend time with people and chat.
I like I sit there, and when I will do meals with people, it's like I will sit there and chat, and they will be going over, and then they'll go, "You're done?" They won't even realize how fast I was eating, simply because it is so smooth and so how I do it. One thing, I eat continental. It's very efficient. I use a fork in my left hand.
You
Right.
should have had a scene about the like techniques of maximizing that.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar probably could have talked about that. That would have been fun because he's a big guy. He eats a whole lot, so
Yeah.
that would have
But
been fun.
no, I never that was never something that bothered me at all.
Yeah. All right, Sean, hit us.
Okay. So as you're writing this,
2 hours, because I'm not sure that we're going to be able to fill 2 hours.
oh, sure we could. It'll be close to 2 hours. We don't have to do the full 2 hours, but okay. So as you're kind of writing these characters who, were streamers, etc., what sort of kind of interpersonal conflicts did you kind of plan for, and what kind of caused those things, and how'd you think about writing them?
Well, interestingly, the streaming angle
Can
had.
I-
Yeah,
can I-
go
can I-
for it, John.
Yeah. When I originally envisioned this, I hate to
And
say
by this, we're clarifying Lynn and the 5-person Scotty's Wolves team, and like Elena and like the other. Is that what you're talking about when you say this, John? Just to clarify what characters we're talking about.
yes.
Okay.
When I was envisioning this world, first of all, the original title was Whispers in the Dark, which was designed for it to have a sort of horror aspect, which Lydia is not comfortable with writing horror. So she's like, I'm not real good at writing horror. But it came from a Skillet song, Whispers in the Dark, which is actually about a guy who is in love with a girl, and she really doesn't see him. And so from my perspective, I hate to say it, it was actually a romance. And it was the whole time for me, it was about Lynn and Edgar. That's what it was. That was the original foundation of the whole story, was Lynn and Edgar. Edgar was the guy that was always there for her, was always right there in front of her, and she could never realize was in love with her. And so that was one of the things that, you did have to stretch out through the whole freaking book, through the whole thing.
And it actually worked out really well for the series because I really enjoy writing interpersonal relationships, not romantic ones necessarily, but relationships of all kinds. But for this one in particular, John and I agreed that we wanted to keep the series YA appropriate. And it would have been a little bit more difficult to believably write a relationship between Lynn and Edgar that did not involve more physicality if Lynn was aware of and was clued in on the romantic angle much earlier in the series. So that like not seeing things really worked well for this type of series and what our goals were for it.
The other thing about it was, I very much right from the beginning had the Ronnie character. And the Ronnie character is a character that some people have sort of dismissed because that kind of character, there have been some people that have chided me about the Ronnie character because he's a misogynist. And everything that's like, if you're not bowing down to leftist women is misogyny. Okay. If you're not literally banging your head on the ground and kowtowing, it's misogyny. Ronnie was based on an actual person who was a schoolmate of my daughter's and was horrifically misogynistic because he was horrifically bad at social. He did not recognize himself as being misogynistic because he was just so freaking clueless, but he was. I mean, I literally was standing there with him talking with one of my daughters one time, and I was about to punch the guy because, first of all, son, you're in the South, and you don't say stuff like that to a lady. And second of all, that's my fucking daughter. I mean, I was this close to punching out a 15-year-old, right? And I was like, wow, Jenny, I thought you were exaggerating about that guy, but I was just about to punch him through a wall. She's like, tried going to school with him for 9 years, Dad. So, he was based on an actual person. Mac and Dan.
Yeah.
Mac and Dan were kind of you needed them to round out that group. They were token comic relief, and weren't specifically based on anybody. But the whole core of the thing was that relationship between Lynn and Edgar. And I know that sounds like John Ringo's, but there's been a lot of my books where there has been some sort of a relationship aspect.
Well, Despero and Prince John.
Roger.
I mean, it's a big part.
Yeah. Despero and Roger is an example. Is one of the examples. And like in Black Tide, the two girls didn't really have like their romantic thing because that really wasn't what the book was about.
Also a bit young.
They were actually at the age
weren't they 14 and 16? Weren't they 14 and 16?
But they were actually at the age where they should have developed some sort of a romantic attraction to someone.
Yeah,
it's
that's
normal.
True.
That's
but in the middle of an apocalypse, I mean.
It's the middle of an apocalypse, and like Faith said, I think my dad made me a Marine so that I wouldn't get attracted to any. Made me a Marine lieutenant because now I can't actually be attracted to any of them. She says that in the book.
Yeah, I remember.
Which is that's part of it. That in fact it was part of his thinking. Okay. And there just weren't a lot of males of their age around.
Yeah.
Because for one thing, a lot of them freaking died.
Yeah.
And the demographic of the people that they were finding did not trend towards teenage males. Yeah. Once they got back on land, there would be more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I've had romantic stuff in some of my books. Actually, in all of my books. Not all of my books, most of them.
Yeah.
Ghost wasn't exactly romantic, even if it made a romance novel of the year. It wasn't romantic in my opinion.
Yep. Sean, to kind of pull it just back a little bit to your specific question about streaming, as you can see from just this discussion of the different characters, the inspirations, the streaming aspect really had nothing to do with the characters and their core development and personalities as a base, because it was really just streaming was the lens through which we could examine the development and the things that modern things that they were struggling with, that are things that our audience was facing at the time. And not in all the same ways, obviously, but John wrote the first core idea of this in, let's say, 2016. He talked to me about it in 2017. We finally got a contract signed in late 2019, and I started the first book in 2020.
And now, as promised, one jump ahead. John Moore is a nanotech-enhanced soldier of fortune. Lobo is an AI, a living weapons and intelligence platform of enormous destructive potential. Two very dangerous wolves in a galaxy of deadly corporate and paramilitary predators. But Moore has grown weary of the killing, and just once he'd like to finish a job without leaving a trail of blood behind him. Not going to happen. Not on a pristine planet called Mackin, where two gigantic corporations vie for control of the local jump gate and access to the riches of an undeveloped world. Dealing with a kidnapping and extortion scheme is only the beginning for Moore and Lobo as they work to stay one jump ahead.
I matched his behavior, reminded of sitting at card tables with him while we waited for cleanup crews and scooping up the money of the newer officers and NCOs who were betting extravagantly in their happiness to be alive, to be anywhere but where they'd been. I'd assumed the registered transfer of any weapon half as powerful as Lobo anywhere in Earl's turf would attract his attention. But I'd half hoped that the fact that the Saw didn't have a contract for Mackin might keep this information away from him. It was a dumb hope, but no matter. I'd left no other tracks he'd be likely to find. May we speak without a formal record, I said, other than the one in Top's head, of course. Yes, he said. He touched a spot on his sleeve. All recording is off. Continue. The notion that being true to one's word is a fundamental underpinning of a strong society either died or moved to life support centuries before I was born, probably centuries before mankind found and entered the first jump gate. For Earl, though, and for me and a few other men and women I've had the pleasure to know, the concept surged with as much vitality today as when Jenny first instilled it in me back on Pinkelponker. As a boy there, I learned the sad lesson that I shouldn't assume others placed the same value on their word as the two of us. But Earl was a proven exception. He said he wouldn't electronically record this meeting, so I trusted he wouldn't. Thank you very much, I said, slowing the cadence of my speech, both for clarity and to give me time to choose my words carefully. I appreciate how busy you are, so I don't want to consume more of your day than necessary. You also knew me well enough that I hope you'll recall how much I prefer getting directly to the point. I always liked that aspect of you, he said. I wouldn't mind experiencing more of it now. I understand, but because I want to minimize any possible negative consequences for either of us in this case, I need to take a slightly more circuitous route. He leaned slightly forward. Negative consequences? Please don't tell me we're meeting so you can deliver a threat for some new employer. I'd hate doing what I'd then have to do, though. He paused and leaned back, apparently relaxed. You know I'd do it. I waved my hand slowly, easily. No. As I've already told Top, I don't want to be on the opposite side of the saw. I simply need to understand how things work here so I don't accidentally cause problems for either of us by saying something wrong. Fair enough, he said. For now. Go. I've canvassed the publicly available data about the SAW's contract with the FC for Lankin, I said, but we all know how much that data is worth. I also know that Kelco and Zychek are the main corporate players here. What I'd like to understand are the limits of your contract with respect to conflicts that involve those two organizations. And for sharing this private data, I get what? Maybe nothing, I said. But maybe quite a lot you'll care about. I promise this isn't a game. He nodded, knowing I was telling the truth. We perform no police functions. The FC locals handle those jobs. We deal with any native fauna issues in new settlement areas, monitor, and are on call to handle any serious armed insurrections, and, of course, make sure Lankin appears prickly enough to any government outside the FC that is not worth their time to attack. The two big corporations have the standard deal with the FC. They handle their own security and frontier action, and they pledge not to use their forces against each other or the FC. The FC, and we, as its enforcing agent, conduct periodic scheduled and unscheduled inspections of their troops and weapons, and they report all weapons acquisitions and militia deployments. As long as they follow the rules, we run our inspections and otherwise leave them alone. The arrangement is classic post-corporate wars, the same one you've seen, the same one all the big conglomerates and governments have used for over a century, since before either of us was born. No one, to the best of my knowledge, knew how old I really was, and I worked hard to keep it that way. What's your role when a conflict does involve one of the two? I asked. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't press me. Yet. Except for the standard small stuff the Lankin police might handle, theft, assault on individuals in the streets, that sort of thing. We have no role unless one of the companies requests our help. All local Kelco and Zychek staff maintain dual FC corporate citizenship. So corporate security handles anything serious as long as it doesn't endanger civilians. He poured a glass of a light green drink and offered it to me. Local tea? Top? Gustafson waved off the offer and I shook my head. No, thank you, I said. One more question, and then I'll start talking. Good, Earl said. He sipped the tea he'd offered me. To the degree that you can discuss or speculate about anything that involves your employer without violating your contract, how would you characterize the FC's relationship with these two corporations? That's an easy one. I don't have to provide any private information. Leila Vaccaro, the ranking FC bureaucrat here and the Lankin rep to the FC Council, is on public record with her discontent over the FC's role as the weak sister of the three. Lankin joined the FC after being developed initially by prospectors from the two companies, and the FC has been playing catch-up ever since. She hates the position it's left her in. He drank a bit more tea. And now, as you said, it's your turn. Zychek's Jose Chung, I said, and paused until he nodded in recognition at the name, has offered a bounty to anyone who captures or kills me. Nothing in Earl's expression changed, but I could feel the force of his increased concentration. Why? I hesitated, despite having known the conversation would reach this point. Answering him would lead to more questions. Eventually, those questions would take us to John's and to Oosterlad, and I didn't want to have to explain their deaths. Not answering would annoy him, but if I kept my focus on the matters that could affect him and the Saw, he might allow the omission. I had to try. Nothing I did that motivated the bounty was illegal, I said, choosing my words carefully, or deserving of that treatment. So Chung's motivation doesn't matter. Earl glanced briefly at Gustafson, so I hurried on before Gustafson could take the hint and ask the follow-up question Earl wanted him to pose. What does matter is that Chung is buying weapons illegally from Oosterlad. Weapons I'm sure Zychek is not revealing in your inspections. Gustafson sat up straighter and leaned forward. Earl didn't move, but tension lines in his face showed the effort the control was costing him. If this is true, the implications are significant, Earl said, for all three major organizations on Lankin. I take it you can prove this? Earl said, definitely a question, not a statement, despite the phrasing. Not yet, I said, but my source is well connected and I have no reason to doubt it. As I'm sure you'll understand, Earl said, a little frustration and anger audible in his tone. No individual's word, not even the word of someone I've trusted in the past. He paused to make sure I caught the tense, then continued, is enough justification for me to take the kind of action that proof of such a violation of a major treaty would motivate. I understand, I said, which is the second reason I need to talk to Chung. After I finish my conversation with him, I have every confidence that he'll both fix my problem and give you all the information you need to act on yours. So, talk to him, Earl said. You don't need any action from us to do that. You're right, I don't.
This has been the Bane Free Radio Hour. Thanks for joining us at the heart of science fiction. Join us next week as Sean Hazlett finishes his interview with John Ringo and Lydia Sherrer for Beyond the Rift. And we continue with One Jump Ahead by Mark L. Van Name, Part 48. Score by Ruth Judkowitz.